Hello. I'm gonna do a video quickly on learning a language, particularly if it's your first new language. Just because I've gone through this process now, and yeah, I'll explain some of the difficulties and give a few tips on what you should do if you're trying to learn a new language. My first tip is try to learn the language in the country um, that the language originates from, but all the countries that the language is used in. But you might want to maybe give a month or so of learning before you do this, just because it makes sense to have a basic grip of a few things to understand a few more things within the language before trying to attempt it. For example, it wouldn't make sense for me to go to China right now and try to attempt to speak Cantonese or Mandarin, because I can't. Basically, I can't speak a single thing, and I'm not going to learn very much unless I'm learning actively with that. But if I've been learning it for 2 months, I'll know quite a lot of the basics, might be able to say a few basic sentences, and maybe some complex ones. But it will improve my pronunciation and my understanding of how they use it in the context of it, if I learn it from them after I've learned a little bit at home. Um, Try to learn the grammar, but first learn the simple words. So you'll want to learn a lot of the simple words and simple expressions first. For example, hello, goodbye, how are you, and maybe a few answers to these. So if, for example, the question is how are you, you want to expect maybe 6 responses. Maybe one like, oh, I'm feeling good, I'm not feeling so good, I'm not too bad, I'm okay. That's the fourth response, I think. And then another response like, I'm feeling pretty good, but I heard yesterday something else, continuation. And maybe the sixth one, fuck off, or maybe another seventh one of something ridiculous like, yesterday I saw 7 kittens walking down the road, and then the person walks off. Because in real life, people have unpredictable conversations. There are crazy people in the streets, people say things that don't make sense. So you should be expecting things that aren't to be expected. But the first things you should learn are, yeah, basic sentences and basic words without context of grammar. Then you should start learning the grammar from that. Or that's what I think anyway. I found that at first I was learning basic sentences and basic words, and I learned little bits about the grammar order. But what was more important was just learning to say these things and learning to pronounce them and to understand them, because they were the basic fundamental parts of the language, the things that we use most often. Can I buy this? How are you? What day is it? What time is it? Where are we? Do you know where this is? Do you know what this is? How do I say this? How do I say this? Or how do I say that? ¿Cómo se dice en español? ¿Cómo se dice en español? ¿Puedes explicar? How do you say that in Spanish? Could you explain? This is probably one of the most important things you can learn, because you'll be using this a lot, and you should learn to use this shamelessly. As you interact with people, there'll be a lot of things you don't recognize, and you'll probably meet people who speak your language as well. And it's useful to ask how do you say something, or what did you just say? ¿Qué dijiste? What did you just say? Or to ask, for example, how is my pronunciation? Or how do I pronounce this? ¿Cómo se pronuncia? For example, yeah. Because the most important things are how and does it work? Because, for example, okay, I can say puedo explicar. No, yo no puedo. People in Spain will understand this because the accent works. Yo no puedo. It means I cannot or I can't. Yo no puedo algo. I can't do some. I can't something. Not I can't do something. Yo no puedo algo nada hoy. I can't do anything today or do something today. But if I now say yo no puedo, yo no puedo, yo no puedo, anyone here who speaks Spanish is going to know why that's fucking ridiculous. They may understand, they may not, but it sounds awful. The pronunciation is terrible, and the melody is terrible. So they're either not going to understand me, or think that I have an intellectual impairment, or think that I'm just mocking them. It's like me saying, for example, in English, I can't do it. I can't do. I can't do. Or I can't do. I can't do. You know how to say it. You know what the word looks like, and you've heard other people say it. But your pronunciation is awful. So yeah, work on your basic sentences and words first, and the pronunciation is key. After that, learn the basic rules of grammar. For example, I'll use Spanish as an example. When you say I am hungry, you're actually saying I have hungry. And there's rules of grammar like the verb to be. For example, I am, I was, we were, he was, or being. It's all being. It's all the same verb. But in Spanish, it's I think it's ser y esta, ser and esta. So you have to learn the distinctions between them. And you also have to realize that a lot of things don't translate properly. You say things a different way, or you can't translate certain things. You have to say things backwards to say them forwards. And yeah, sometimes verbs and the ways you say things don't really make sense in English. But you have to learn why they do or don't make sense, and why they are or aren't different. At first I was learning through songs, and then I was learning through my book, and then I was learning through Google Translate. And what I realized is all the context that I got from the music videos that were being translated by YouTube is a representation of what it means, right? And you're thinking, oh, that's what a language is, but no, because if you translate the words word to word, it's a different sentence. For example, if I say there aren't things, is I, no I, there are not in Espanol, right? But you can also say they don't exist, no existe. You can't say they don't exist in English unless they actually don't exist. For example, if someone says to you, if you say to someone, oh, can you go and get me some Oreos from the shop? And they say, they don't exist. What the fuck do you mean? You can say that in Spanish. No existe, eso no existe. Because it just means they don't exist here. They don't exist here is perfect to say, but it's weird in English, right? So this is an example of that. Another thing is like, because sentences translate in because things translate in two ways. They translate in the way that what they mean in Spanish, their meaning in Spanish, and actual word to word. It's hard to explain. It's like, for example, or in another language. For example, if I were to write a love song and it was like, I love you today, but I might not love you tomorrow. It's because we're in a pickle. It might actually be today, love you, maybe not tomorrow. But they might, and so that's a different order, right? Or maybe it's something like today, love me you, or tomorrow, love me you not, for example. And it means it's a different order, right? And then but we're in a pickle part might, that's not that's a saying, that's a phrase that doesn't have meaning in itself. So a translation might be we're in a bad situation, right? So when you translate from a music video, for example, you'll understand the significance of something, the emotional significance. But if you're only learning that and you're not learning the exact word-to-word translation, it's bad grammar, because you can understand how to convey a significance of a feeling, but it's useless for practical things. If you're trying to describe something practical, like there are pickles on top of there, and instead you say there's complications somewhere. Is it there? That doesn't make sense, right? So you have to learn both the emotional significance of things and the exact translations word to word, because then you start to understand the language. Because if you translate something exactly word to word from one language to another, you'll be using the same words, but it won't make sense. In a lot of cases, it won't have the same significance if you're using slang or whatever. And then if you translate it so you understand the significance and compare the two, you'll understand the difference between their slangs and their usage of words and their ways of saying things and the exact translations of a word to a word. Like I have, for example, in Spanish tener, yo tengo, I have. But for example, you can't say I have hungry. You can say I have hunger, but it's not the same. But in Spanish, you say yo tengo hambre. That's normal. I have hungry. I have hungry. And it's the same in German, I believe. I think it's ich habe hungrig. Ich habe hungrig. I think it's that. I could be wrong. And so you got to learn the grammar specifically, and you've got to learn the significance of things, and also the exact word-to-word translations. Once you compare these, you start understanding. So this is the basics. This is the basics of it. That's for writing. That's for the first bit of understanding. The next part is speaking it, right? Once you start speaking it, you can speak it slowly. You need to learn things like, please could you repeat that? Slow down, or I don't speak this language fairly well. ¿Puede repetir, por favor? Por favor, más despacio. No entiendo. And what was the other one? I can't remember. Oh, I don't know much Spanish. Yo no hablo mucho en español. Yo no entiendo mucho en español. So, when you say that to them, they'll understand. If you're starting to learn quite a bit and they're seeing that, they'll start pressing you hard. But if you can't handle it, say something like, I don't understand you, but say it wrong, because you'll understand it's wrong. But when you say it really wrong, they believe you more. For example, if someone came up to me who was Polish and said, I'm sorry, I don't understand you very well, I'd just try and continue, probably, because I'd think, oh, okay, well, I'll try it again. And I wouldn't understand that they just need to a minute to process it. But if they said something like, understand I'm not having a very much, I would probably think, okay, let's chill, let's try different methods, see what this person understands, and come back to them later. And that's the reason why you might want to do this. You should speak to as many different people as you can in this, and you should try your best not to learn slang until you're quite a lot more advanced. Because, for example, if you learn slang too much, in say, if I were to learn Chilean slang, they use plenty of words, and they use ito, ita, with every single word. So ito, ita is a feminine or masculine version of something, and it means small version of that in slang. It's like me saying, there's a pizza ita. I think pizza is masculine, pizza ito. That means it's a small pizza, but it's slang. The real way of saying it is, I think, is un pequeño pizza, a small pizza, not trying to mix the words together. We do stuff like that in English. So if I start talking ita, ita, ato, ito, ata, ita, ita, nobody's going to understand me outside of fucking Chile and south of Peru. So I think I'm mastering a language, and I'm using all this slang, and I think I'm great. And sometimes I'm using it awfully. Like, someone might ask me what time it is or something, and I'll say it's raining cats and dogs because it's an obscure reference to the weather. And in my country, it makes sense that you'd use an obscure reference to the weather because it might give you an indication of time. But if someone says that when you ask for the time, you're going to think, what the fuck is this person saying? Now, when you don't understand the culture and the structure of the language and you start using slang to begin with, you're fucking yourself. You have to learn extremely grammatically correct, extremely well, the language in an extremely grammatically correct fashion. Sorry, I'm speaking bad English. It's because I'm speaking Spanish more, and they speak things they speak in a very different way. They speak things very differently. Ellos hablan muy diferente. Ellos hablan cosas muy diferentes. Creo que eso no. I don't think that's correct. So yeah, try to avoid slang, and when you hear people talking slang, try to learn it, but don't take it to heart. Don't use that as your primary go-to. Be boring and use, good grammar. Try to talk perfectly. Yeah. The next thing is something I'm guilty of this. Don't talk to just one or two people that you know really well. So I spoke a lot of Spanish with a few people when I was in Quito, but then I ended up with my girlfriend in Chile for a while, and I primarily only spoke it with her. To be fair to her, because I was speaking it so much with her, there are some things in Spanish I just will not fucking forget. Te amo, baby. ¿Qué estás haciendo? No, no necesitas, bebé. Te amo, ven, tengo algo. So, I know these things pretty much off by heart, and I know things like asking to buy shit, what the price of stuff is, and I know numbers off by heart because you use them so often. But a problem that you'll develop, for example, if you have a special relationship with someone for a month and you exclusively talk to them, is when you start fucking up, they know what your fuck ups mean, right? So they understand you and they'll respond to you with grammatically correct, whatever, target language, right? And you think that you're speaking in a correct way, but you're not. They just understand your fuck ups. It's like if you work with bunch of Polish or African workers or a bunch of French people and they say I mistook. You know that they don't mean that because the context isn't right. So you go, okay, no problem. If you keep doing that for, if you do that 100 times within 1 month, or maybe 30 times in 1 month, that person thinks that that is the correct way to speak it. So for this reason, it's good to speak to a lot of different people and to not get too accustomed, and to speak with people you don't know as well, because they will be less forgiving. They won't have a fucking clue what you're saying, and you'll know you're saying something wrong, and it will be disheartening, but you'll understand how you fucked up, and you'll go back and research that, right? So when you're learning to speak it with as many people as you can. If you're confused, ask questions or just stop. Tell them you can't continue and give yourself time. And learn. Try to figure out. Listen to words. Listen to the orders they're using them in. Try and determine, is it slang? Is it really good or not? What I learned was actually a lot of people who speak Spanish here in Latin America have shit Spanish. A lot of the times, but they can speak and understand it way better than me. But their Spanish is terrible. Because it's natural to them. Because they've spoken it for so long. It doesn't matter. It's terrible. They understand and they know what everyone else is going to understand. So it's a code in this way. And I'll give you some tips on how to learn. There's a lot of YouTube videos. You can learn through those. I'm not going to link these because it's just too hard and there's too much favoritism and there's too many languages. I can't link, 100 languages, 100 different YouTubes with 100 different. That's thousands of. I'm not doing that. One thing you can do is learn from YouTube videos. You can use Google Translate, but only use it for one word or small, non-complex sentences, because Google Translate fucks up a lot. And learn through many mediums. So use online verb translators, free ones. There's plenty of free ones available. Use lessons on YouTube. These are usually great. You can find people who are very, very advanced teaching skills in select languages and are very, very multilingual, so really understand the differences and the best ways to explain. You can learn from music videos very well. But make sure you learn from a few sites and you compare sentences to sentences and paragraphs to paragraphs to see what's the most correct, to see where one side has made a mistake, and to see the differences in interpretations possible. Because there are subtleties in other languages that take a very long time to understand, and it's good to understand the very different subtleties in the same translation. I'm not sure if you understand that concept, but I did in my head. And another thing, if you're playing with Google Translate, I came up with a very good game with my girlfriend. We play cards, and she's learning English, I'm learning Spanish, and we'd basically have a game of cards. Whoever would win would get 3 sentences that they could translate from their language to the other. We'd copy and paste it. She knew a bit of English. I know a lot more Spanish than she does English, but she's learned it for a lot longer. She probably knows a lot more. She's just not used to speaking it. It's not normal to her. She'll probably learn it very quickly if she comes to England, which I hope she does in the future. But anyway. And after these games, we'd make these 3 sentences, and we could talk about specific things in their lives or things that happened in the day. So she would usually do that, and that was good for me. It would make things memorable. and I'd do like two sentences of something really practical and one sentence really bizarre or just really funny. What was it? I was once fatally beaten to death with a cabbage. I think it's yo fui golpeado fatalmente hasta muerte con un repollo. I think it's that. I think that's the sentence in Spanish. And yeah, it's good fun. You can have fun like that. I found a good way on my own was to translate, sentences, questions, and then give like 6 or 7 answers. And then from those 6 or 7 answers, translate all of them and give more answers, more questions. And I'd end up with about 1,000 or 2,000 sentences in a day from that. Or, for example, to have a conversation and have several responses and try and build like a 10 or 20 step conversation. You'll find that if you're doing 6 responses to each of that and maybe a response or 2 responses to each response, you're going to get several hundred sentences very quickly out of that. It gives you a very complex and practical usage of this. And whatever specific subject you're learning, you start to learn a very large amount about one specific subject. But I think the main way to learn is to understand the differences, and is to speak it. I think speaking it is better than typing it. You can read a lot of another language. I've been reading bits of Spanish, but I'm finding when I speak Spanish, because Spanish sounds like it's spelt, when I go to read it, it's not hard to read, but when I read Spanish, because I'm reading it and I'm thinking of some of the words with an English pronunciation, when I go to speak it, I'm dreadful. So I find it's better to speak it to learn it. But it's best to do both, to understand the structure and the way it looks, and to understand the way it sounds and feels, and then to understand the meaning behind that. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that, and yeah, have a good day.